Everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I wanted to show my collection of lessons, property, deteriorating versus improving, and depreciating versus appreciating. So I want to go through this. This is part of my collection of lessons. Anything I say on this channel is not anything advice, and let's kind of get into it. So I want to talk about this real quick. It's kind of a grid that I've made here. On the left side of the screen, everything to the left side of the line is deteriorating. Everything on the right side is improving over time. And then top and bottom, everything above the top is appreciating over time, and things below it are depreciating over time. So obviously you want things that are improving over time and appreciating over time are the best things. The top right quadrant is the best, and the things in the bottom left are the worst things that you want in your life as far as property goes, right? So first up, before we get into, I guess, the chart on the left, I want to talk about the appreciating versus depreciating thing that's I have on the right side. And I have this little kind of scale where it says a 3 and a 0. Just to quickly go over, and I know I talked about this in my inflation video that came out just previous, things that are the same price year to year, exactly the same price. Let's say my house is worth 100K. Next year it's worth 100K. People think that, oh, good, my house is neutral. When in reality, it's actually depreciating in my mind, and you know, in this example, because you didn't keep up with inflation. Inflation is usually around 3%. And I talked about inflation in the previous video with the whole inflation talk. But basically, if your house is the same in 1 year to the next, you're actually losing money. It's depreciating. If it is staying the same as inflation, it is neutral. If it is gaining higher than inflation, like 4, 5, 6, then it's actually appreciating. So really, when somebody says, "Oh, my house, went from 100K to 103K, it's appreciating," it's not. It's keeping the same as inflation. It is zeroing out, and in most cases, property that doesn't have any, extras added onto it every month or every year or whatever. If you didn't improve the deck, or if you didn't do this and that to try and maintain its value, would it be the same, year to year? In most cases, it's pretty much the same as inflation, so it doesn't appreciate or depreciate. But something like a house is actually deteriorating over time, and this is where I'm going to kind of go into some examples. So I want to get that out of the way, that when you appreciate, you're actually appreciating over inflation, over the 3% or whatever inflation is in your country. If you're getting less than that, anything less than 3% or whatever inflation is, you're actually depreciating. So that's what I want to go with on this right example. So keep that in mind when we're talking about things that are appreciating versus depreciating. So getting into examples, think about something that's in your house. So many things are in our houses, so many types of property. Everything we have is property, from cables, the clock on the wall, the PlayStation, the monitors, the computer equipment, everything I'm seeing in my house right now. Everything is either deteriorating or improving over time, and everything is either depreciating or appreciating over time. So where you want things is in this middle neutral type box, at least. You want things to be in the top right and not in the bottom left. So kind of give some examples. So something like a bed. A bed doesn't usually appreciate over time. Does it depreciate over time? Well, people make new beds with new springs, new coils, with memory foam, whatever. So theoretically, a bed is in fact depreciating. Now, is it deteriorating over time, or is it improving over time? It is deteriorating over time. Every time you use the bed, it gets worn. It gets, worn out, the springs, the gel, whatever's in it. So theoretically, a bed would be something down here. So we'll call this the bed. And this, of course, is something generic in your house. It's depreciating and it's deteriorating, but not at a bad pace. It's generally around this box, which is fine, right? Something else in your house, let's say a desk. The desk, you use the desk. The desk doesn't really care if you use it or not. It's just sitting there. They usually don't really deteriorate over time unless, you're banging on it or whatever. But they also don't really appreciate over time, right? It's just kind of neutral. So a desk, theoretically, is something in the middle. Right in the middle, we'll call this the desk. And that's just one example of something that is neutral in both cases. Kind of going more into it, most people think of something that depreciates really bad is a vehicle. And that is one of the worst things that you could buy, is a vehicle, because a vehicle is not only depreciating, is also deteriorating. So the worst thing is, let's say a car. We're going to put the car way out in here. And the car is depreciating because new cars come out every year. And with newer technologies, newer electronics, things that last longer, usually, hopefully, as well as things that deteriorate on it, such as the hoses. The engine is deteriorating every time you drive it, the starter, the battery, all these things that it uses. You have to fix it every once in a while because it is deteriorating. That is one example of something that is deteriorating and depreciating over time. That is the worst thing that you can have. So if you have these, usually you want to get rid of them, or you want to use them in a different form, or create it as a function of some sort of job or whatever, right? So that's something that you don't want to really own because it's always depreciating and always deteriorating. Another thing is a house. A house is always deteriorating. Now, people get this confused with depreciation. A house doesn't, in my opinion, depreciate. Newer houses come out over time, which is always a function of houses. People always need places to live, and people are growing in the world, and there's more people now than there was the year before, or whichever, before COVID, or whatever that is. But a house usually stays the same. It doesn't really appreciate or depreciate unless you put some extra money into it, right? But then as you improving it, it's not the house improving itself. So I can't put it on the improved side. It's always deteriorating, but it's usually theoretically neutral. So I'm going to put it right here as the house. Now, people are going to probably say, well, my house is always appreciating, but is it appreciating more than inflation? It's staying the same as inflation. If you look at the last houses for the last 20 years, the houses went up, 230, 250% or whatever it was. I said that in my inflation video, which is the exact same as the inflation rate, which means that your house is not appreciating, it's not depreciating, it's maintaining the same house value. A house is still a house. You can sell a house for another house. A house doesn't automatically improve itself. The house needs shingles, the house needs maintenance, the house needs upkeep, the house has wood, the wood rots out on the deck, you need to replace the deck is deteriorating as part of the house is deteriorating, right? So that's one thing of, something that is deteriorating, but is maintaining basically the same market value. Going into something else, something like a computer. Is a computer always deteriorating? Theoretically, yes. It is never improving over time. It does not get faster over time. The operating system might, improve over time, which could improve the functionality of the computer, but the hardware itself is going to be deteriorating. The hard drives, if you use them, the solid states eat up, the amount of cycles that they can use. That is something that is deteriorating. It doesn't deteriorate too much, but it also at the same time depreciates in value because newer technologies come out. So in my opinion, this is all my opinion, this graph, a bed and a computer are basically the same. They both deteriorate over time. Computer, and they both depreciate over time. Very small compared to a house, and especially compared to a car, which is the worst. Other things, I'll give you some examples of things appreciating and improving over time. So gold is something that is appreciating over time. It is something that is rare, until we can maybe, some sort of data mine the, galaxy with all the gold that's floating out in space or something. It is always appreciating because there's less and less gold available every year because they're used on things like electronics, and then they get thrown into the garbage. And there's less out there, there's less gold out there, so the value of it is appreciating over time. Does gold deteriorate over time? Not really exactly. It doesn't really improve over time. Gold doesn't multiply the more you keep it. It just is what it is. But it's something that maintains value really good. So it's kind of neutral in the deteriorating versus improving. So we're going to put gold here. That's a G, gold. Another thing are diamonds. Diamonds are pretty much the same as gold. They're used in multiple things. They're used in actual diamond rings or whatever. They're around the same thing as gold. Things that people don't even think of, something like speakers. Speakers in a car, speakers in your house, those things are deteriorating over time. Do they depreciate over time? Usually, sometimes, mostly. So they'd be somewhere down below a house that maintains its value. This would be something like speakers. That's just something that people don't really think of as speakers, as speaker. Something that depreciates, so they're like, oh, it's just speakers, but they don't really think that it's degrading and deteriorating over time. Every time you use a speaker, the rubber and everything gets in it weaker, and after 5-10 years of running speakers, they probably die. Same with TVs are also with the speakers. TVs over time, the liquid crystals in them, or the projector that you use. I have a projector, it's got a lamp hours. The lamp is going to deteriorate, it's going to die. It's just like the furnace that's in my house is going to die in the future, and it's because it's always deteriorating, right? That's how you kind of determine if it's deteriorating or improving over time. Other examples are consumables. And consumables could be something like paint. you know, a can of paint is not depreciating and appreciating over time, it's just paint. But because you use it, it's a consumable, it's going to technically deteriorate over time. It doesn't keep its value, right? It's not unlimited paint spray. So it's going to be deteriorating. It's pretty much pure deteriorating, and consumables are way over here, as in pure deteriorating. Consume. Okay, you know what I mean here. So that's consumables, basically pure deteriorating because you're using it up. It could be, you know, people are going to say, well, you could paint something and it could be something that improved, but it's not. It's the function of what it is that you're talking about, the property. The paint in the paint can is being used up. It is not like, I'm not spraying the paint can on the deck, which is making the deck before wasn't improving. I don't know if you can kind of understand what I'm saying there. But something that is appreciating and improving over time, and I'm not saying like you should buy a bunch of this, but you know, some people might want to, is wine. So wine over time, like, you know, when they say age like a fine wine, or you know, like that type of thing, that's something that is improving over time. It tastes better, it gets better over time. A lot of alcohol is like that, where it's like, you know, it's been dry aged, or like a steak. A steak is also somewhere in here, where it's something that improves the taste, the quality, or whatever it is over time, and it gets more valuable over time because of that. Of course, I'm not in the market of buying and selling wine and steak, but that's, you know, one area that is a good thing that you want to have, that improves and appreciates over time. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with this video, is where do things fit in your house? Maybe chart this out and see, does it deteriorate? Do I need to fix it? That is a big, you know, flag of something deteriorating, is I need to fix it constantly, or I need to provide maintenance for it. A vehicle, you got to always do the oil changes. That's something, because the engine parts and everything inside of it are deteriorating. The oil is deteriorating over time. That's why you need to replace the fluids. You know, something like anything that has maintenance, general maintenance, is going to be deteriorating, right? Or your shingles on your house, you know, everything. So that's what I wanted to show with this video, is appreciating versus depreciating. You want to have things more, you know, either neutral in this middle zone, or on the, you know, the top right if you can. You want to avoid the bottom left if you can. I had with 3 vehicles, you know, I'm down to, we're hopefully getting down to 1, because I just don't want any of that headache. I don't want any of that extra insurance going that's wasted. I don't want anything that's deteriorating in my house. You know, of course I'm going to have speakers and TV, but I don't consider them, you know, I know that they're deteriorating, and I know that they're depreciating over time. So that's why I don't put a bunch of money into them. Yeah, I put in, you know, like, you know, the best quality I can get, the best bang for the buck I can get, but I'm not going to go super hardcore into something that is going to be way out in the bottom over here, that's just, you know, bleeding money over time, somewhere sitting in a garage or wherever it is, deteriorating, as well as, you know, it might not be deteriorating if I'm not driving it, or might not be using it, but it's depreciating a lot more, and it's depreciating over time. So it's like, why would you want your money in something that's bleeding money? So that's what I want to show with this video. Thanks, and talk soon.